My amusement is what matters to me. I laugh.
I got you.
Welcome to the Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we return for our 2018 season with a brand new retrospective focused on movies based on Stephen King's Carrie. This one was actually a request. This retrospective was a request from listener Nicole Loftus. We've been intrigued by the idea for a couple of years. Now, bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's film, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming Young Captain Nemo series from Fievel and Friends Macmillan Books. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello.
Howdy.
Howdy. Welcome back. Welcome to the wondrous 2018 that is. I cannot believe it's been so long since we've talked.
I know.
Far
too long.
Yeah, it's been very strange, and I don't even know what to do with the evenings of the week without hearing all you guys. Okay, also in Austin, speaking of, is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
That's Mr. Drew Edwards. Drew, if you're nasty.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's what I've missed. Okay. And also in Austin, president of Girls Rock Austin and lead singer and upright bassist of the internationally acclaimed all-female rock and roll band Danger Cakes, whose new album Gloomy Girl is available now. Jamie Barr, hello.
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 Good to chat with
You,
you.
I am so excited to have you back and to hear you and Drew. I feel like the last time we talked was probably when we did the live show in Dallas. Is that right?
Oh my
Yep.
gosh, is it? I think so. Holy.
Wow.
That's been a long time. Wow. It's been like
Yeah,
half a year.
no, I know it's crazy, but yes, that's right, and you know, and Tony was there, and Drew was there, and it was a one, and Julia, we're not there with you.
A tornado and the house got lifted up into the sky and then it crushed a witch.
You were there.
And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. She's also a member of the improv a cappella vocal group In Harmony's Way. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, Julia.
Improv a
I
cappella
can't help
vocal.
it. I'm sorry. It comes out even before I can catch it.
Okay. What have you been up to? Mine's very short. I've been trying to finish a book. It's as simple as that. Drew, what have you been doing with your time?
Writing on a yet that can be fully revealed Halloween Man project, and also trying to get the finishing touches done on the ever gestating Lucy special that should finally be out here in the next few months. So just
Excellent.
really writing. I swear, like horrormovies.net kind of took a back seat to all that, and I have gotten some messages on Facebook that there are people that are irritated that there has not been new reviews posted in a long time, and I apologize. But my goal is to, once I get this handily behind me, I'm going to throw myself back into that and make it better than ever. But whole lot of writing like yourself, sir.
Yeah, I understand completely. Jamie, what about you?
I've been a busy bee between writing grants for Girls Rock and all we had our year-end campaign, and we raised over $15,000. On top of that, yeah, it was pretty awesome. And then I've been practicing with Jean Caffeine. We played her first show last night. She's kind of a cool punk rocker. She's got this like very artsy folk vibe. She talks about growing up in the San Francisco punk scene in the 70s, and her music is really interesting. And I've been doing a couple shows with Danger Cakes. We played the Hot Rods and Hatters Festival, and that was pretty darn awesome. Got to, just rock out, yeah. Now trying to, get some new stuff going. We've got a lot. We're trying to get some music videos I'm working on now, so that's
Oh my gosh, that's
in
cool.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Make your production even more complicated. Yes. Tony, now you've been on Crunch, right? Is that is that correct? Can you talk about
Well,
that at all?
yes, and also, yeah. So we just wrapped Ruby season 5, and that's really cool. I wrapped a couple weeks ago, and then but we're keeping full on production going. So and keeping 2 bands together. So Rise from Fire are
Yeah.
writing more tunes, and we've been playing out. We got gig in March, and then we're going to be in Houston in May, and as many gigs as we can get, we're doing that. The Deserts of Mars, again, plugging away. We hope to be playing out the next month or two, but yeah, that's going slower, but it's still a thing. So writing as a
Very cool.
2-piece, which is going to sound different than the previous album, but it's all unfiltered me as Deserts of Mars, and of course my drummer. But as far as writing goes,
Wow.
I'm on the spot. I'm on the hook for all of it, pretty much.
So wow.
I'm hoping people dig it. It's sounding pretty good, and I think we got momentum going again, which is great. So, but yeah,
Awesome.
just trying to keep everything together. So.
And Joya, you haven't been on the show since we did Scrooge back at Christmas time. What have you been up to?
Well, I've got my own immigration law practice, so there's nothing. It's boring. There's nothing new. No, I'm kidding. This administration has kept us very, very, very busy as far as like, oh, great. What are we up to today? It's an exciting time. Yeah, and then raising, 2 teenage girls.
The Rage Carrie 2 is a 1999 American supernatural horror film directed by Kat Shea. It is a sequel to the 1976 horror film Carrie and is a straight up in world sequel based on the novel of the same name by Stephen King. It features Carrie White's baby half sister Rachel Lang. This is something that we discover basically like 3/4 of the way into the movie, but here it is. It is Carrie White's baby half sister. The film stars Emily Bergel, Jason London, Dylan Bruno, and Amy Irving, who shows up again as the character that she showed up in the 1976 film. Let's get brief opening thoughts from everybody. Jamie, since you're our most infrequent visitor, and I think you'll have a lot of fun stuff to say. Why don't we start with you and go Jamie, Tony, Drew, Joya, and then I will have literally nothing to add to all of those excellent opening thoughts. So, Jamie, some quick opening thoughts.
Sure. I got a kick out of this movie. It's kind of one of those, yeah, they're bad, but it's still kind of good, but it's still really bad. But I enjoyed seeing the 90s just explode on the set. So many ball chains and necklaces. It just warmed my heart in a weird way. It's like, oh, high school. But I thought that the movie itself could have done a few things better. And some of the plot twists are a little on the ridiculous side, but I'm not gonna lie, there's a couple scenes in this movie that like break my heart, and even like Drew and I were like, look away. I can't believe they showed that. That whole scene with the dog, like I just lost
Sure.
I lost it. I burst into tears. It was terrible. So the movie, you can't say that, it pulled on the heartstrings, and whoa, what a wicked soundtrack. So, yeah.
You have a weird musical connection with this movie that we both laughed about.
Yeah, we didn't realize that Danny B. Harvey is the one who did the music score for Carrie 2, and I played with him a few times. So
really,
his band. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool. That's seriously cool.
Yeah.
Tony, what I mean, when you think about this movie and think about if you think back to Carrie, and I know it's been a while since we discussed the 1976 film Carrie, but what are your opening thoughts about this?
I think there's a lot of stuff that could have been done. And again, I don't want to get into the like, oh, this movie should have been this way. But I do feel there's a lot of like kind of missed opportunities to do something a little bit different and still keep a lot of what makes this movie. Actually, the cool parts are really cool. It is definitely one of the most 90s things seen in quite some time. I mean, there's been a few 80s movies where we're like, ooh, this is maximum 80s. It's about as 80s as you can get. And yet, this is that for the 90s. Soundtrack, the soundtrack is good. Just
God, you think they would have something good like Garbage?
Oh, yeah. Well, they mentioned that's another thing is
I know I was going to ask it. Do you like Garbage? You like Garbage?
That was
That's
so funny.
I actually do like them. But anyway, I think that this movie definitely, you could put it on like a dual disc with The Craft, and it would be like a perfect dual disc.
Oh my God, you're right.
Like it would just all kind of work together. There's some.
It probably
some
is.
marketing ideas.
Tony, the way you say that, I want to say that it is somewhere on a dual disc with The Craft. I mean, you can't.
Probably.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Probably in the $5 bin at the local HEB.
I am gonna.
We've seen
it's got a bunch of great bits, and I wish the parts that didn't gel were a bit better, but it does what it does.
Love it. Thank you, Julia.
I really just want to say that there's a lot of gross, violent, gory things in this film, which bothered me a lot because I don't like that. But I did get a kick out of it. I thought it was entertaining, and the jump scare at the end scared the living crap out of me. So that was effective. It has its moments, but it's definitely not the best film that we've done on this show. Drew, what do you have to say?
Well, this puts me in a very awkward position because those of you who have listened to us for a very long time, or maybe just gone back into our back catalog and listened to the original Carrie podcast, I am not a big fan of the original Carrie movie. I realize that it's kind of a beloved horror classic, and that kind of puts me at odds with hordes and hordes and hordes of horror fans. But I don't like that movie very much, and that's something we discussed at length when we did the original Carrie. So I feel a little bit strange because, one, I'm going to give that movie a big bump up. That movie is miles better than this one, but because I watched this movie with Heckle Vision like completely dialed up all the way to 20, I enjoyed it so much more. Like I laughed my ass off through this whole movie, and I would say I don't think it's a very good movie. In fact, the score by Danny B. Harvey was probably the only thing I will actually legitimately liked about it, because it's kind of ridiculous. It's sad because it has a lot of really timely stuff in it, but it deals with them in this very kind of juvenile way that just made me chuckle. I also annoyed the hell out of I don't know, actually she kind of laughed at first, but I refuse to call the lead character anything but Carrie 2.
Yes.
Like I realize that she has an actual name, but to me she will always just be Carrie 2. So I don't think this is a good movie per se, but it is an amusing movie. And yeah, this movie is like smash you in the face 1990s as the original is like smash you in the face 1970s. Like that's
a really good point.
Yeah, like everybody talking about the 90s-ness of this movie. Like, and it's funny because every now and then I'll talk to someone and they go, "Oh, the 90s didn't really have a flavor," and I'm like, "No, you need to go back and watch Carrie too." Like if you'll be like, "Oh, there it is."
Yeah, you can tell them like, "Go get this disc," and you'll understand. Like, oh.
It's a time capsule of very much like there's Coop Devil T-shirts, there's those ball necklaces, there's so much ridiculous slang. Yeah, it's just totally over the top 90s. More over the top 90s than like early episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is saying quite a bit.
Sure.
So this movie made me laugh, even though it probably shouldn't have. So for that, thank you, movie. It's still a really bad movie.
Oh man, you know what it's missing though is gigantic jeans. Like that's the one. Like gigantic tent-sized jeans. That's the only thing, now that I think about it, I think that's the only thing it's missing. It got everything else. But that's the only thing I can think of, like, oh well. But yeah, oh man, is it 90s?
So I want to start straight off by talking about the difference of the character of Carrie, and then and maybe that'll also give us a glimpse of the difference between the worlds here. And I think there are people that probably grew up with this movie in the same way that I grew up with all kinds of things that you look back on and you go, wow, that's not actually
I
acted
did.
good. But for some reason yeah.
I remember
I mean,
watching this
like, I made
movie
you
in
watch
my
him.
bedroom,
Mm.
like,
Oh, really?
as a teenager.
Wow.
Yeah, like I this is one of the few horror movies that I saw as a teenager. Like I remember seeing
Wow.
it's like
That's
just on
wonderful.
TV.
1999. I was already out of law school by that point. I mean, I think we were living in Austin. I had no idea that this movie existed until really recently. Okay, so I like calling her Carrie too. Her name is Rachel, but you know how when movies get translated into other, like they take them to other countries, and the people translating them don't really care about the distinctions, and so they'll just call her Carrie. Like another vampire called whatever will go to Japan and they just call it Dracula. We could just as well call her Carrie, but yeah, but she's Rachel. But I don't mind. You may also call her Carrie too. Um, what I wanted to point
I
out
do, and I do
is that
frequently.
okay, yeah, and that's fine. I'm prepared for that. So this girl is our Carrie in this movie, and she's very different from Carrie White. Partially because she's lucky enough to have been raised by not necessarily the most fantastic,
Foster
but
parents.
not but foster parents, not terrible foster parents. They're fine, and so that makes
They're not
her a little
great.
different. She's
That's
yeah, I
supposed to
And
mean,
be
one of
I've
them
never
is
yet
one of them is
seen
the
good
lead
foster
singer of
parents.
X.
Really? So
Yeah, John Doe
I
from X is the foster. Well, one of the singers of X. I should specify. There's two singers in X, but yeah, John Doe from X is playing her foster dad.
so what is the deal, first of all, with foster parents in the movies? I have yet to see good foster parents in the movies. Whereas in the world, surely there are people who go, man, I did. I grew up with foster parents. They were fine.
Yeah.
I don't know why. This is just a trope. I mean, this is where you know that this is basically a Lifetime movie that got released into the theaters because every single thing in it is basically kind of like, and I'm not saying this as a bad thing. I love films like this, okay? I love them, but everything is just sort of right off the shelf. It's like bad foster parents, check. But what it gives us is a Rachel, is a Carrie kind of character who is like way, way more together than Carrie White ever was. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I thought Rachel was like way more together. I feel like she was also more confident when there's that whole scene with her, potential love interest, future boyfriend, and that guy, the chauvinist douche, let's call him football player. Well,
Yes.
I can't remember his name, probably like Brad or something, but
Well,
he
there's Mark. There's two douchebags. All right. There's three, but he gets nicer. The two true douchebags. There's Mark, who is the ringleader football player, and then there
Mark, that's the
is
one.
Eric, who is the one
Kid
who
from Home
sleeps with her
Improvement.
friend Lisa.
And Mark
Yeah.
is the one who
Right.
owns
Yeah.
the house. Mark's family owns the
Right.
house that they have the party at. Yeah.
And it's funny because when you watch Home Improvement, you kind of know he's going to grow up to be a bro.
Seriously?
You're
He
like,
was on I did not
he's
even
the
know that.
oldest
I
son.
had no
He's the
idea.
oldest son
Yeah.
of Home Improvement. That's why I was saying this movie's so like 90s. I was like, oh my
Wow.
gosh. I love when Mark and the boyfriend come up to the 1 hour photo and
Yeah.
demand the photos of her now like deceased friend, and her retort is not a retort that Carrie would have ever said. Like, he talks about like taking her to a game or basically taking her out and doing her a favor by like letting everyone see her with them. And
Yeah.
she turns him down and he's like, why not? And she's like, I'm a dyke. And I just thought, Carrie you would not see Sissy Spacek doing that.
Yeah.
In Carrie 1, first Carrie.
Yeah, and the
They
rose tattoo.
climb.
Sissy Spacek never would have had the rose tattoo. She wouldn't have had. This girl has a best friend. Sissy Spacek. Carrie White had no one. She had no one.
She was
She had
more
her
of
mother.
a pathetic character, I feel like, where everything, you felt bad for her, and you're like, oh, she's just so tortured, and it's just like a tragic character. Whereas Rachel, you kind of think like she's got a handle on things,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple times where suddenly she's like, I don't cry. Like, and you're like, okay. But I could
Yeah.
see, I know other teenagers who used to say shit like that. So,
Exactly.
but in the end, things get a little heated. Pun absolutely intended.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching this character. And it's possible that that's where where some of the drama goes. We'll get to a minute to the major drama, because they've sort of they ratchet the social adequacy of Carrie up, but in the process that means to combat her, basically the other teenagers need to get like 10 times more awful. I mean, if you think about it, the people who were against Carrie in the first movie were the boys who were all just doofus lunkheads. All right, they were just complete morons, and they were all completely controlled by this sort of queendom that was being run out of Carrie's high school. Here, basically the boys control the school, and they are misogynistic bastards. I mean, it's
Yeah.
some crazy.
Well,
I
that's
actually felt like this was very timely in a way, because I feel like there's this whole battle against the objectification of women and this whole basically the Me Too movement of the 90s, the
Yeah.
guidance
Well, it was
counselor
based on a
Girl
true
fighting
story of some guys who were like, there was a football player scandal where they were doing all this, sexual abuse and whatever. So it was timely then, and it's timely now, which is kind of cool.
It's yeah. I mean, I know perhaps it's painting it in broad strokes, but in general, the reason that it's believable is those the jock guys are doing what jock guys kind of do across high school. I have no idea if that's still the case, but it's a pretty common, like, those guys, and they were at your high school, and they were terrible, and that's how they operate. And some of them wanted to be successful. Some of them went to jail because of that.
Yeah.
Most of them, a lot of them were the car dealership guys later on. But
I mean,
and some of them became the president. So
exactly.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, I was like, someone voted for Trump.
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot of I think all of those guys probably did.
The thing of it is, what I find interesting is that you've got this character of Jesse, who is definitely just as much, maybe not quite as much, but when we first meet him, he's sleeping with his then girlfriend, who he really doesn't give a shit about, and that's abundantly clear. But the other guys are way uglier. I mean, like way uglier, because they're like sleeping with women and like ranking them on their comparative conventional attractiveness and giving them points, and just like really being bizarre and cruel. I mean, it's just strange, and they're being driven by one another, so they'll sort of goad one another on. I can completely believe in that. And then if you plucked like any one of these guys out, like the leader of the group, whose name is I think it's Eric. If you pluck him out, maybe they'd fall apart. In other words, they might not all be constantly committing statutory rape and then like breaking up with the girl the next day just to sort of get off on the emotional reaction. That's strange. I mean, I also wonder, if you did this today, if you did this script exactly this way today, would people object to it? Or the fact that they're the bad guys, would it be okay? In other words, given that this is a stupid Lifetime movie that's up on the screen, nevertheless,
no, the
is
fact
this
that they
level
die
of
horrible deaths would totally make it an acceptable
I guess
story.
so.
I think.
But they're not.
I think that this movie would get roasted by MRA guys on Twitter.
That's possible.
Especially considering.
Especially considering it has a female director, and I believe that the reason that the one big important part of there being a female director is how good this movie is on consent. When you get down to it, when we're skipping ahead, but later on, when I almost said Carrie too, when Rachel says no, the boy goes,
your work here is done.
When Rachel says no, I don't feel comfortable having sex, the boy goes, okay, and and the scene then progresses, but at
he
that
does, but
moment,
the rest of the guys aren't that way.
Yeah, which again,
you know what, Drew? I actually I didn't call her Carrie too, but it only occurred to me after you said that why I had such a hard time remembering that her name was Rachel, and it's because the movie's called Carrie too. So I was always expecting her to be called Carrie, and every time her name was Rachel, I was like, oh yeah. I don't know why I'm having a hard time remembering that that's her name, and it's because it's called Carrie too.
Yeah.
To me,
so I think that is
like, not that this is on the level of Terminator 2, but when you watch Terminator 2, they literally have a Terminator 2.0 in that. So to me, this Carrie 2, Rachel, whatever, Carrie 2, she will always be Carrie 2 to me. She's like a bigger, badder version of Carrie.
So two things. Yeah. Well, that does separate him from the kind of the rest of the pack, and that's kind of what we're really selling. There's a lot to unpack about, I mean, the high schoolness of it and dealing with all that. I kind of wish that there was a little bit more of that, because there's a lot, with the original Carrie, there's a lot about fitting in, and there's a lot of stuff about religion and how fundamentalism works and being different. She's sort of accepted, even though they're like, oh, she's ugly or whatever. It's not like Trick or Treat where the metalheads are getting beaten up constantly or whatever, or attacked. She kind of just has figured out, well, I'm going to stay under the radar, and her high school life is not great. It's not terrible, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff in there about navigating high school, even to the point where they've decided to make even the kind of girl who would probably in other movies be her nerdy friend.
Yeah.
The girl with glasses, like, they made her kind of bitchy and terrible.
Tony.
Yeah.
I would say that I like this better, though, in that regard, because I'm not saying I like the film better, but I like this treatment of the character better because she is relatable to everybody who's watching. So everybody who's watching can go, oh, I've totally been bullied that way, whereas nobody's been bullied the way that Carrie was bullied, like with her, her mom being as psychotic as she was and the whole thing. So it's like nobody can really relate to that character. Well, not nobody, but it would be.
I think people who have lived in a abusive home can.
Yeah, but even then,
I feel like this is more about the bullying in the original Carrie. Like there's the bullying, but it really is on point about like child abuse, like child abuse at home.
Yeah.
Right, but the film is never about the child abuse at the end. Like the end is not about the child abuse. It would be if it had been about her getting back at her parents, but instead it's getting back at the school. So here it feels like the punishment fits the crime a little better because the people who are tormenting her are the school kids and not her mother, who is actually institutionalized. And also, by the way,
these kids are monsters too. Like they're really horrible.
But that's part of what I was getting at. I think that to me it breaks down partially because they decided like, oh, well, we're gonna just do the end again, but up the ante. It became this like almost like nostalgia, but we're gonna do it better because now we have these effects. And to me, that was part of the like that does it a disservice. Like they have a lot of stuff about her controlling her powers, her not knowing who she is, all of the high school stuff, all of that really there's a lot of meat there that all to me collapses because they've decided like, well, it's called Carrie 2, so here we go. Again, because of how these things work, that could have been the studio. It could have been like, there's any number of reasons.
But I got the impression that it was the other way around. I think it was already the way it was, and then they went, because that's what it said in IMDb is that they realized how much it was like Carrie, so they decided to change the name to Carrie 2. But I think that the script came first.
You're saying it wasn't even a Carrie story?
No. It doesn't start out as a Carrie story. It starts out as its own thing, and then they went, this is so much like Carrie, let's just call it Carrie 2.
You're kidding. That can't.
I wondered about that. I didn't read up on it because I just kind of took it at face value. But yeah, it did feel like that in a lot of ways. I mean, they go back. Wow. I mean, although they must have done rewrites because they bring, it's directly tied to Carrie by the time this makes it up onto the screen.
Lots of ways.
I feel like this movie, though, like that. Honestly, most of the time when you make a decision like that, it's usually to the detriment of a movie. But like this, I don't think was strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet. Like putting the Stephen King lore behind it props it up just a tad. Which isn't to say that it's good. it's really tough to like review a movie like this because it's got all this stuff, but like that is again very timely. But because of how like one-dimensional the bully characters are, it doesn't ultimately have anything constructive to say about toxic masculinity, which is disappointing to me.
It's so much about. It's so much a revenge fantasy, if you think of it that way, too. Like, I mean, you want to see everyone kind of perish. Like, everybody who kind of gets, even, I feel bad saying it, but even the guidance counselor, like, let's just bring up that craziness, because who goes to a psych ward and breaks someone out and thinking, like, oh, like, this is a good idea. You're going to save your daughter from going crazy. Let's break crazy mom out of jail, or not jail, but, the mental hospital. And then, mom starts acting crazy before you even get her where she's going. Like, maybe then you should have, like, let me check myself before I wreck myself. I am a guidance counselor.
That's a good point.
That's when the true B-movie...
I feel like that's poor Carrie. I was like, poor Carrie too. She's going around. She's in mourning. This poor girl just lost her best friend, Mina Tavari, another totally, like American Beauty, like whole thing. But talk about another '90s throwback. And everyone is just giving her shit all the time. Everybody is just horribly ruthless and sadistic towards her. And this guidance counselor's like, let me help you. Let's talk about your problems. And she's like, you know what? I'm okay. I just want to focus on other things. I don't need to just talk about it constantly. And I think that's one of those things that, making someone talk about their grieving process is only cathartic sometimes if they want it to be. Like, some people need, it's all in their own time. And she's like forcing it, it's just like, dude, where'd you go to school? Like, who told you that was okay? And she's constantly talking to Carrie about her own, mental illness. And, again, I know she's trying to be like, oh, we have this common bond. But poor Carrie, too, is like, girl, I'm not
guidance
crazy.
Guidance counselors don't necessarily have to be like, I don't remember what degree they have to get, but they're not like full-fledged psychologists. You know what I mean? They may just
social workers. They have an MSW.
Yeah, so it may be that she actually doesn't have that much training, and that she hasn't been, because a lot of people become counselors because they're trying to deal with their own crap, and so she may very well be like, I need to deal with my crap through this, and so I'm going to force it.
They do bring that up, though. Like, they make it a point to have her go, oh, you care about her because of the things that happened to you.
Well, her husband, I think, or whatever.
No, it's the cop. It's a friend of hers who's a cop.
The cop. He says, are you sure you're not trying to save the girl that died 20 years ago or whatever?
Yeah, well, and that's why, that sort of makes sense. She's still terrible at all of this. She deserved all of this criticism.
But I always loved Sue Snell. I mean, this character, she's the one who, remember, she starts out bullying Carrie just because peer pressure. Everybody else is, sure she is too. And then she very quickly kind of realizes, I feel bad about this personally. I kind of like Carrie because she's such an underdog. I'm even gonna friend take her out on the prom just as a nice thing. She literally just thinks that would be nice. She has no idea they're going to do the things she does. And she's kind of a victim herself of just all of this horrible shit that goes down. And it's interesting to think that woman grew up, here she is, and into her life comes this, fabulous haired Carrie too. And that she just sort of goes, oh my God, you're another one, and I don't know. She is to me.
Tony,
you're the one who said there's a lot of.
That's how
exactly.
It's so funny because that was such a '90s thing. Like, again, who's your daddy? Remember that was a big catchphrase and everything. And
no, it's true.
She just talks about it multiple times. Does she know who her father is? And Drew and I were talking about this. How old was Carrie's dad? Because Carrie first Carrie came out in what, the it came out in the 70s.
Like,
It was John
let's assume it's
Travolta's
supposed to
first
be 20
movie.
years earlier. All right, so
Yeah.
teenage Carrie died 20 years ago, and apparently Carrie has a baby half sister who I presume was born 5 or 6 years after Carrie died. I guess I would have to assume, and if we're to assume that Carrie 2 is 15 or 16, then
Carrie 2's
then
supposed
that
to
means.
be a senior in high school, isn't she? So,
Oh,
or
what is that?
16?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Her
it's like
friend was
16.
15. The one who the friend who died, and we haven't really given any real time to this, but what kicks all of this off is the terrible suicide of her friend. But her friend was underage. Oh no, she was 16. She was 16, but her
Right.
boyfriend was 18. So that's the difference. Okay. All right, good deal. Yeah. Yeah. Man alive.
So
So
then
yes, so
had to have been born in 1982. So I guess that's not so unfeasible. But Drew was saying, he's like, isn't the dad supposed to be dead in the first one? Like, where's Carrie's dad? And
I
especially
don't
he's
know.
going around, he's got this weird SKD, I guess, or no,
He's
I guess it is STD, like sexually
he's
telekinetic
Oh, well,
disease.
I guess it's sexually transmitted telekinesis, I suppose, and
Yeah.
it's a recessive trait, so that it only yeah,
See,
it
wouldn't it have
passes
been
from the
funny
dad.
then if they had named her Carrie? That would have been so perfect, because then it would have turned out that, oh, wait a minute, it's because she has the same dad as the other Carrie.
It's just really there's like
I feel bad for
4
her
or 5
because,
other
like, always
Carries in
living
the
in
town are all like, who is
Wait,
your
what did you say,
dad?
Tony?
I knew when I knew we were going to be doing this series, I wanted to bone up on things Carrie, and I didn't ever do it. I never reread the book, and I never took a moment to go back and rewatch the original movie. So my memory of what was going on in that is unfortunately foggier than I would like. But where was Carrie's dad in the original movie? Like, is my memory of that is that he is departed, or like he is out of the picture. So like,
He's just left,
what is
if I
the deal?
recall.
So he went out for
I
a pack of cigarettes and never came back.
That's what I was just thinking. Went out for a pack of smokes.
That's the cliche. It totally is. I think that I don't think he's dead. I think he's just gone, because he found Mrs. White a challenge to live with, and
Yeah, I mean, what it says in the wiki is that he walked out on the mother of Carrie to be with Rachel's mother. Like, he left one
oh,
for the other.
well,
So.
la-di-da. Okay, and that didn't last either.
delicious.
Yeah, because Rachel grows up and she says, "I don't have a dad," so
He's got a type.
what's yeah, no kidding. Boy, does he.
I
I
love
mean,
him
because
religious and
she's
crazy.
exactly. Oh my God, whatever weird issues he must be dealing with, that poor gentleman. But what gets me is, and the reason I actually really like this movie, considering I've never seen it before, I like how it has all of these deep thoughts going on and is presenting them with the shininess of like 90210 or Dawson's Creek or something like that.
Oh yeah.
It's just it's so bright. When you think about like Brian De Palma with his like split screens and all the like the strange, Herman sounding music and all that stuff. Here, this has none of that. This is really and this color, I believe, is intended to make us feel happy and comfortable watching it. Like we feel safe watching the way that these people are in ways that we didn't feel safe watching the first movie. Does that make sense, or am I on a limb with
Yeah,
this?
the one part actually I thought where it was a good use of color and the like cinematography was actually during the scene where Carrie is like, or is it Carrie too? Again, it's terrible. Rachel has like been basically kicked to the floor after at the party where they've revealed her losing her virginity, losing her virginity to the boyfriend, and they're playing it like over and over, like instant replay on like a bunch of different TVs in this house during a huge party, and the speed up the movement of all of the people around her that are teasing her, and it's fast. And it felt like so jarring to me. I actually had nightmares from it that night. So it was like just that, for some reason, of all things like that. And it's weird because it's like the party lights kind of give it like a greenish tint for that one part of the one scene. So it suddenly goes from very like pop, art style to very like surreal and very quickly. Like almost a
That is
requiem
a
for a
super
dream.
dark moment.
Yeah.
That
It
point
is.
where I mean a lot of those things of let's take the color out and make it all blue or do whatever we do, that stuff feels like anything from like a true crime thing on TV or whatever. But that moment you're talking about in that party, that is so deeply scary and weird. Because when you think about this, think about like I've left my house. My teenage son is having a party at the house. They have a giant screen where they're showing child porn, and nobody seems aware that this is a terrible thing. In fact, they in fact have sort of ginned themselves up into a frenzy of like taunting and just it is weird and scary to think that I'd like to say that would never happen, but I don't believe that at all. I think such a thing
I'm
is
sure stuff
entirely
like that does
possible.
happen. We know that stuff
Yeah.
like that happens in this day and age with just Snapchat and things along those lines.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so easy for any of that to happen. And
Yeah.
that's something now, like, it's a big deal. Like, they have, like, the friend sneaking out outside when she's losing her virginity, and you
Yeah.
don't know if the boyfriend's in on it or not. And you just have to go for it and be like, he's a nice guy. He's not like them, even though his name is in the book and he only has 2 names. But,
Yes.
it's kind of
Well,
funny.
and he
Like,
just slept with
nowadays,
his
though,
girlfriend. He just slept with his girlfriend like the day before. Actually, I think a few hours before he asked Rachel out. He slept with her, but the reason why we as the audience think it's okay for him to ask Rachel out is because he plainly doesn't care about her. He's like he has so little regard for his earlier girlfriend that we write her off too. But that's crazy.
well, she also seems
Yeah.
kind of like at least it's easier to write her off because she's kind of nasty herself. Like,
Yeah, but no, but
it's
seriously,
what
I
happens.
want to hit on this again. Actually, that point where she's having the sex scene with Jesse, and I find it fascinating because this is the kind of because we're talking about consent in the culture a lot right now. And it's
Oh,
something that the people get really defensive about it. They're like, well, I don't know what that looks like. How do you? And actually, this movie demonstrates it really, really well. They're making out, they're getting hot and heavy. She goes, I don't feel comfortable. He goes, okay, and he actually starts to get up. And then she goes, you know what? It was really nice of you that you said okay, so I'm going to have sex with you anyway. But that's an example.
But
That was consent. That's what that is.
yes.
It's
but
very
also
simple.
the
I remember
car.
what I was gonna say. The camera, the whole idea of the camera, like them taping it on the VHS.
Yeah,
Nowadays everyone has access to videography instantaneously.
yeah,
So that's something. That's what I was saying about what would be terrible. And that type of thing does happen now. So
yeah,
it does feel like in a way like this movie does strike on a lot of different chords. It just doesn't have the follow through. It just kind of gets sidetracked by that whole revenge aspect, and that's it.
Well, yeah, but that's part of it is especially the first scene where they're in the car. They're in the middle of nowhere. She says, "Hey," I mean, she does decide
Like
like,
the
"Hey,"
football
later
field.
on. But that's the cool thing is like, in this case, she said, "Hey, I don't want to do this." He says, "Okay," and then it's kind of at her discretion. Like, okay, well,
yes,
I feel like I'll get back to you when I'm ready. And I think
yeah.
that's a big difference from a lot of like movies.
Well,
Also
and
with the whole like a lot of times it would also be, well, are you sure? Like, come on.
yeah,
And then maybe it
Well,
would
they
happen or whatever.
usually do
I just thought
that.
that was good.
I feel like they always do that to the heroine, like in a lot of horror movies. I mean, she's always the virginal one. I feel like that kind of
Mhm.
actually is almost a trope. But I do feel like this is a good viewing of consent culture, like the early stages, showing it. We need more movies to actually be a little bit more on the ball about that, but this movie's a little heavy-handed with that.
Yeah, well, that's
For
the
the most
problem,
part.
and that's what I kept coming back to. Is I didn't crank up the roll your eyes factor in the way that Drew did, but I do think there's a lot of stuff going on that actually is interesting and worthy of a movie that perhaps is like just gels a little bit more. It doesn't have to have the ending like, oh look, it's like Carrie, here you go
Yeah.
again. Like there's a bunch of stuff there that just never really kind of gets it. And then the end I thought just was awful too.
The thing is about this movie is like a lot of the stuff about being a teenager, it gets very well, and it doesn't find a way, because when we talk about the revenge fantasy, when Jamie's talking about that, that's one of the oldest horror tropes. You know, you're thinking it's Frankenstein's monster going after the villagers. It's Jason Voorhees going after the jocks at camp. You know, that is one of the biggest tropes in any monster movie, in any horror movie. And what this movie doesn't do, which could have elevated it above what it is find a way to play with the horror trope in any new way. It just kind of has to follow the blueprint set forth by all this other stuff. And I wish that they had been able to take that and run with it in a slightly fresher way, but unfortunately they don't.
Yeah. It's so funny because if we weren't stuck with the tropes that come at the end with her massive massacre, which I grant you is super important, then probably all of these things we're talking about would have been resolved in a different way. I don't know how exactly. I mean, but with her, dealing with the nicer boy and the rapist boys and all this stuff, maybe it would have been a simple just sequence of revenge on just a couple people. I mean, I really, and maybe that would have opened the script up enough to deal with some of these other characters. I don't know. I don't know because we don't have the counterfactual in front of us. I wanted to point out that Dice Rollin, who's a YouTuber out there, divided up the main points of the Carrie films, and I thought this was amazing. She said you have to consider the teacher, the mother, the bitch, and the boyfriend, comparing each of them, and it was fun to see that because you've got we talked about the teacher, which here is Sue Snell, and I think Jamie's right that Sue is not as good a teacher as, because this B film is having her do some crazy stuff like breaking Carrie's mom out and all that, like just goofy
It's the
hijinks
road
that would
to
never
hell.
happen.
It's paved with good intentions, and she is exactly that character.
It is
She's
that's
trying,
nutty stuff,
but
and no person would do that. Whereas Betty Buckley in the first movie plays the teacher who likes Carrie, and she acts like a normal human person who doesn't live her life obsessed with the teenagers she deals with, but she's interested enough, and she's having a hard time understanding them. That woman acted like a real person. This woman acts like a cog who is kind of controlling a bunch of things in the story that is Carrie 2, such as springing the mom and whatever. Having said that, when she gets killed at the end, and I guess we should get to talking about the final climax, but when Sue Snell buys it, I was shocked. I mean, shocked, and not like, oh, well, that actually makes perfect sense. I feel so fooled, but damn it, that was actually one of the characters that I was enjoying watching, and I
I
feel
knew she
terrible
was
that
gonna die. You know,
you
because
knew she was
the
going to die.
teacher, the first teacher dies in
Yes,
Carrie. So
nearly
and
cut
that
in
teacher
half,
was a lot
nearly bisected.
nicer.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's just a
That's,
bystander, and so I knew Carrie doesn't kill her on purpose.
yeah,
She's killing one of the douche bros, and
yeah.
with a spear through the head. And Drew was saying that that rips off Hellraiser, that scene,
Oh,
with the
thank you,
spear
thank
going
you,
through
Drew.
They
the.
You're
rip off
exactly
Hellraiser 3 of all things
yes.
with Death by
Oh,
CD.
Yeah, I had the
yeah,
same
that's the
thought
one
with
Of
this
that
all
movie.
stands out.
movies to steal from.
Oh
And yet
man,
Hellraiser
Yes.
3, for all its fault, better movie than this.
no, we're gonna agree to disagree on this.
I'm
Hellraiser
gonna
3.
disagree on that too. I think this is a better movie than Hellraiser 3.
Doug Bradley
sounds-
gets some great monologues in that movie.
So what, man? That movie's you can
Well,
blast
we should
that
save
off.
that for our inevitable Hellraiser retrospective.
Inevitable.
Oh
I think it
man.
is finally
Actually,
time.
you
God,
know
I
what's
don't know.
funny is this. Speaking of needless sequels and stuff, this movie is still better than any of the rest of the Carrie series we're going to watch. Because Man, oh
Well,
man! My apologies to the whoever wanted us to do all of them, because if you do like them, we're in disagreement. I apologize in advance
I
because
think
they're
it will
not
be
good.
fun to dive in to each of them and then start to, but because since it'll cover a lot of the same stuff, we'll have a chance to dive in and begin to like pull apart our own feelings about what these different ideas mean, the jocks and the high school, and because what we have after this is two more versions of Carrie. I am fascinated by what it will be like to talk about two more versions of the same story. Um, it's kind
I
of
feel
fun.
like
It's like
this,
watching multiple versions of Hamlet.
for me,
I
it's
mean,
like
not.
knowing this is gonna happen is like knowing you have to go to get some kind of dental surgery or flu shot that you know that in the past you've gotten sick from the flu when you get a flu shot, or any
If
number of
only.
unpleasant, like cleaning all of
I
your
mean, if only we
toilets
had
at
multiple
once.
versions. Yeah,
That's
Embrace of the
that's
Vampire. Remember that? We could just think
I
if
would
there were
rather
multiple.
rewatch Embrace of the Vampire because I've watched all of these Carrie movies not over the past like year and a
Tony,
half
I
or
think you
so.
need to go back and listen to your
So
Embrace of the
basically,
Vampire comments, because I'm really shocked to hear you say that, given how much you loathe that movie.
It's the truth.
He really, really, really did not like
I
it.
pushed through all of the Carrie, and I don't think I came out a better person on the other side.
ooh,
I've
But
seen
anyway,
the
so
other
this one
Carrie.
though, this one we do leading up to this, we do get the kind of classic plot of all the villains, high school villains, get together and go, oh, let's get Carrie, scare Jennifer to death, whatever we're gonna do,
yeah,
pull everything together. The girl distracts the good guy, so he has a good reason to not be there, and also fairly believable because then it looks like he's with this other girl and he's betrayed Carrie too.
yeah.
They pull out, and I like this rich house that is super rich, but also the guy I guess goes deep sea fishing, so there's spear guns. That's the one, like I assumed they were gonna break into
If
his
this
like
was in
gun
Texas
case.
and not Stephen King verse, so
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's Maine. Oh
Yeah.
man, they might have stood a chance because we would have been talking like heavy artillery fire.
Yeah,
They would
I
have
was like,
brought
well,
out some machine guns.
I'm
It is
merely going off of what and think about where I grew up, and I was like, oh well, I guess they're gonna get guns, but oh no, it's
Quick, get the
spear guns.
lobster
But like, how many spear guns do you need, and why are they in glass cases? Like all of this feels like what's cool, spear guns, or there's a pool. We need something to go with the pool. How about spear guns, or maybe even that there was a spear gun in one of the Friday
kind
the
of
13th
wonder
movies.
if honestly, I kind of wonder if it's because the issue of teenagers with guns was already a hot button issue,
Maybe.
so they did not want to actually have kids.
Yeah,
with
Columbine had only
real
just
firearms.
happened.
I
No,
guess
actually,
maybe.
no.
Yeah.
It says in IMDb that Columbine was about to happen. Like, it happens a month after
Oh.
this is released.
Oh,
But
geez.
that there was actually a Stephen King book that involved a school shooting that he actually pulled it, like stopped it from continuing to be published because of all the school shootings that have been going on. But that was before Columbine. So this actually precedes Columbine by like a month.
Wow, I
Yes.
didn't realize that. I thought this.
I didn't either. Yeah.
No.
But what a weird choice. Spear guns. Multiple
Yeah, no.
spear guns. Everybody
Tony, you
arms
said it right.
themselves with separate spear guns. That's
Yeah.
just, for a movie that's not shot in 3D, which traditionally the spear gun is like the coolest to shoot at an audience because
That's so true.
it's slow
Oh my God, Tony!
and comes at you
Tony,
as a
when
spear.
there's a point, and this is a spoiler show, so there's a point where she murders a young man by shooting his scrotum off with a spear
Yeah.
gun. If you had done this in
that was
3D,
so. She didn't. No, she didn't do it. She has blinded the other girl by breaking her glasses into her eyes, and then that girl's holding the spear gun, and that girl just turns around and stabs him in the nuts. It's not.
and then
it
shoots it, which tears the
True.
nuts
Yes.
off.
Yes. You're
and they
right.
fly
You're right.
through
But it
the air.
wasn't. My point is, it wasn't Carrie. It was this other chick that she was
Okay.
controlling. Yeah.
I'm just saying you could have gone a full Friday the 13th Part 3 with this, and those rapist nuts could have come flying at the screen attached to a spear gun. And that
that scene in particular, though, is why I think if this was released in today's climate, there would be some butthurt alt-right dudes on the internet
Yeah.
saying social justice warrior all day long about this movie, about this movie, which makes me like it more. Actually,
It's specifically the rapey bro. I mean, they're all
Yeah.
kind of rapey, but it's the one that, like, you know, her best friend committed suicide over that gets castrated. So, you know, you're kind of like, all right, well, that's some just dessert.
Well, this movie is operating off of the post, right? It's the 13th rules of horror movie, which means the bigger an asshole you are, the worse your death is going to be.
Yes.
Yeah, I will say that genitals ripped off by spear gun is something that I can't remember in any other movie. So if you're going to go with gore and originality, I think at least this has that. Which I don't think I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever seen that. So kudos to you, Carrie, too, for emasculating a jock rapist with a spear gun. Because there you go.
Very
for all
creative.
of its other faults, his originality there is great. Oh, and exploding, and thanks, Jamie, for the constant, so she's kind of supposed to be Alicia Silverstone, right?
Yeah,
yes.
she really is.
Yes, I think
We kept
so.
saying that, but she was hired because she looked just like Alicia Silverstone.
No, well, she plays Alicia Silverstone's character on Clueless, the TV show.
Oh,
and
is that right?
Oh, man.
Yeah, she's also, if you watch Flight of the Conchords, and the first season, she's Sally. She plays the one who, she's the part-time model, but she probably still has to keep her not normal job.
I forgot about that.
She played Cher on the TV series. That blows my mind. So, then the timing is perfect here. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad you're here. Because I never would have known that, and that explains a lot, because in a sense it gives us sort of a meta text that in a way Cher is part of the problem, and Cher buys it in the end because her fashionable glasses explode into her brain. That is just I wish we had Kat Shea, the director, here. I mean, I wish that we could talk to her and find out, how much of this is deliberate. What were you thinking? Was the castration?
I don't know if she would come on this show after some of the stuff I've said.
Maybe. I mean, it depends.
I've been a bit of a dick. I hope she doesn't shoot it off with a harpoon gun.
You're marked. The rest of us may only get shot through the face with a spear gun. You, however, get a special demise. Sorry.
I mean, didn't that thing shoot an eyeball? Wasn't that what happened in Friday the 13th Part 3? Doesn't it shoot like eyeballs?
That is an eyeball, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. God bless. There's so much opportunity here, and that's by the way, the only other castration I can think of, Tony, that was like this, that was like hardcore like that, was Teeth from 2007.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where
but
the young lady.
The whole point of the whole narrative.
Yes.
Like, I mean, that you're expecting that throughout, whereas this is like, hey, we've got spear guns. They're right in the pool, not getting that back. Plus, she's setting everything on fire. But in general, and that is there.
The fake blood, the CGI blood in the pool bothered me so much, because it's not like I guess he did get his head hit, but he gets knocked out and then suddenly he's bleeding from his mouth as he's drowning.
Yeah,
he drowns and then suddenly there's blood coming. It's that doesn't happen.
No, it does. If you get a head injury, you can bleed out your mouth, absolutely. But I think a lot of the blood in the pool though is actually Carrie's. See, I can't call her anything but Carrie. Rachel's, because she's been shot as well, and she's been in the pool.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a whole scene where they show it coming from his mouth as he's
yeah, but that can happen. If you hit your head hard enough, sure. Because I actually thought he was dead when the way he got hit. So I'm sure he's bleeding a lot.
Well, then he drowns. So that's pretty scary. That whole thing is pretty scary. Whereas I love that Rachel just punches a hole in the thing.
Well, they really missed an opportunity there because for some suspense, because she splits a hole in the thing and then goes up through it, but he could have grabbed her and they could have had another tussle underneath the water, but whatever.
Absolutely. Sue Snell's death, when she shows up at this party and she dies just sort of accidentally because Carrie is starting to kill the bullies, she dies just like Scatman does in The Shining. You know, he comes all that way and then immediately gets an axe to the chest. Except for at least Scatman brought a snowcat. In this, Sue has no purpose for being there at all. I guess she brings the mom, but the mom doesn't actually
Who has
accomplish
no
anything.
purpose at all?
Um,
Her mom does nothing.
yeah, yeah.
Nothing.
It
Like
feels
that's
it feels rewritten. It feels like this whichever one of you said it, like I guess we got, yeah, Tony, you said it all starts to fall apart because we decide, well, it's time for the big finale, so drop everything we were doing, and because Carrie's gonna Hulk out and kill everyone now,
Yeah, it just
and
feels to me. I mean, yes, of course, there's some impressive horror movie gore, and like there's all the revenge fantasy. But when you decided that the thrust is going to be let's sort of remake the end of Carrie, but up it because it's the '90s and that's what we do. There's a lot of other things that could have been done. There's nothing with her struggling to kind of control. They hint at her struggle to control it. That kind of goes by the wayside. There's a lot of places it could have gone. It kind of goes for like, well, we named it Carrie 2, so here you go. Ta-da!
Yeah.
And it's not terrible. It's just there's so much other framework to hang something on that's kind of disappointing. And again, I do hate, like, it is kind of lazy to be like, well, it wasn't the movie I wanted and I would do this, blah blah blah. But that's just
absolutely.
Did anyone really want a Carrie 2 though?
Not really. But we got it, and so it's just, to me, it's seeing the missed opportunity makes the parts that don't work as well even worse, because the parts that do work.
But there's a fine line between, you can unfairly say this isn't the movie that I would have made, and you can fairly say, hey, this movie was following certain plots for 70 of the 90 minutes, and then all of a sudden it dropped half of them. That's a fair thing to say.
That's true. Yeah.
And because Sue Snell's plot shouldn't have gone like this. She should have actually been able to work something out with Carrie without Carrie slaughtering everyone. And that's the other thing, is since they want to have Carrie slaughter everyone, then they have to doom Carrie, because Carrie can't get away. What's going to happen? She's going to get what? Like, the KGB is going to pick her up after this and she's going to be an assassin. I mean, what are you going to do? She has to die.
I'd watch that movie.
Yeah.
Especially if it was made by Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh, yes. Why? No, that's true. See, you say that, but that just makes it terrible to begin with. Why not?
I don't think it would be good. I don't think it would be good.
No,
but I'd watch
it. Doing it to be like the. No, I don't want to see the sci-fi version of that. I want to see this trend that we've gotten lately, where like really good directors step up and take something and go, oh, I'm going to make this. Like,
sure,
I want to see the new Planet of the Apes trilogy version of that KGB Carrie. That's what I would like.
That's interesting.
Screw that sci-fi crap where it's just made
how that would be
cash in, because that's what
it
this
could be
is.
Good
in a lot of ways. It's a cash in the way the Sci-Fi Channel would cash in. So no. I don't want. You can have what you want.
Is it too much to ask for something in between? Like something,
why
something
in between? Hulu original.
But why settle for that? That's my question. You can have whatever you want, because it's your fantasy.
Immediacy and a hope for more practical effects.
I got you.
Like not to turn this into a thing about Planet of the Apes, but even though I enjoyed the first of the remake trilogy, the heavy use of mocap kind of kept me from revisiting the subsequent sequels, because I just miss the practical effects from the original movies. Anyway, that's a whole other topic.
But I think you should see 2 and 3 if you haven't, because they actually.
I understand that they're good films. I'm sure I'll get around to watching them. Like it's the moment they crop up on one of my streaming services, I'm sure I'll watch it.
You're not wrong though. That was a big concern of mine. I do wish there was more practical, but those movies are better than I had anticipated, and they surprised the hell out of me. Anyway. But yeah, have whatever you want. I would prefer it to go that way in terms of good movies as opposed to sci-fi.
Oh, I was being a sarcastic prick, which is often my role, so it's okay.
There's something to be said, Drew, though, for that. You may be right that it's just too much to hope for. So like Tony's saying, we should hope for at least something that really surprises us. Like, this takes a B movie idea and makes it an A plus delivery. I get that. And I think your point is, yeah, but that never happens. So let's at least have something enjoyable. I get that. That makes sense. Uh, so, uh, that takes us to the death of of all of these characters, including Carrie, who gets
Carrie too.
Carrie too. Yeah, you
oh
have to
my
refer
God,
to. She's
Rachel!
either
I'm so
Rachel
sorry,
or Carrie too.
Rachel.
I love how
Okay.
I've infected all of you with my
Yes.
my belief that she should be called Carrie too.
But she
Oh,
should
it's
be
so
called
sad. I
Carrie
feel
because that's the name of the damn movie. No, yeah, I was really shocked at, like I said, how violent all of it was. Like all the people who get killed by this flying CD collection and, impaled by various things or beheaded or whatever. Her death is the least shocking because she, I guess, decides that that her boyfriend, what's the guy's name?
Jesse.
Jesse.
Jesse. That she decides he's not one of the bad guys when he shows
Right.
up. He manages to convince her that he actually does love her and that he wasn't in on the filming of them having sex. So she actually dies pushing him out of the way of a falling flaming beam, and she's crushed by that. And I mean that was pretty. If there is such a thing as heaven and hell, I don't know that buys her a ticket out of hell necessarily, but at least it gets her a little bit, maybe better, closer to the medium place like they have in the Good Place, because she did save him. Like, but that's, I don't know, she did an awful lot of bad stuff first.
And you were saying that the violence, and it's not even just at the end. Like the way, how graphic it is when Mina Savari's character jumps off the building and lands on her face on the windshield of the car, and they're showing it from within the car. Like it's so graphic, and like I said, that whole scene with poor Walter, the dog, like getting hit by a truck,
the dog rolling under the car.
Yeah.
Oh,
but he
Drew
makes it.
is a seasoned horror. Yeah, he does make it, but like you yelled out. I can count the times on one hand where I ever heard Drew like yell out at the TV like in horror, and it was like, why would you show that? Like, and I just thought that was kind of funny of all things. I mean, it was terrible. Like I said, I just burst into tears.
I have a heart.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but I know.
So, once Carrie decides she's going to save Jesse, so then, but she's consumed by flame, right? I'm trying to remember how exactly she winds up dead.
She's
she got
buried
crushed
under a wall, like a wall
Rachel?
smashed. Yeah,
Rachel.
Yeah, she got crushed by the beam.
Yeah,
and that's it. She doesn't.
Or by the roof. I really, it was kind of like the roof.
Yeah, she's just consumed by flame. Yeah. I had briefly in my memory, I had thought she'd escaped, but it was because I was thinking of.
I don't think she got consumed by flame. I think she's just crushed because he goes to her after she's crushed. I mean, maybe eventually she is, but she dies from the roof falling.
Yeah, because he can't lift a roof piece off of her.
Right.
And so she's
Although
done.
She can throw him out of a window with her mind and land him in a pool like more than 100 feet away.
Yeah, but once she's crushed, because she didn't see that coming, or something. I guess you're right that she could have just thrown the roof off of him before it hit him instead of just getting under it.
I meant
her.
It was like, why couldn't she like lift that off of herself? I mean, I guess if she's already like crushed.
Yeah, she's already
been shot with the flare gun too. But,
yeah. So, and that gives us, and since in this last third of the film we are tracking with the original Carrie very, very, very closely, then right after this we cut to much later, and we have a vision very similar to the vision that we have in the first movie, which is that for a brief moment it appears that she's come back. That was much more of a shock in the original one because it's Sue is at her grave, and then the arm bursts forth. That's a major spoiler, but people remember Carrie. And here you have, she shows up. We know that it's not right. We know that she's dead. And then there's, she just sort of bursts into ashy flame or whatever.
No, into a terrible...
he goes to the window into his dorm room several months later.
No, she bursts into a terrible CG. Like, why even do that? Like, no one who was involved. Not to be too harsh on people who do effects, because I know it's hard and it was really hard then, but that effect does nothing. I don't understand like that tack on bit. I guess it's meant to show kind of, oh, he's still dealing with things, but man, oh man, we could have dealt without, just really done without that, because it's awful. Other than it be kind of a jump scare, but man, that was really bad. And that again is like, why? Like, you had a thing, okay, the tragedy's over. Oof.
Well, they did that in the first Carrie. I mean, that's like I guess it's just another homage, but an unnecessary one. Like
it's unnecessary.
It's one of those
a waste
things
of time.
where, it just feels like another thing they just added on because they're like, well, we decided to call it Carrie too, so we better go with it.
So let's get our final thoughts. I'm dying to know how all of this sums up. We'll go in the same order that we started in. Jamie, we've talked about the Rage Carrie 2 for about an hour. Like, what are your final thoughts? Should people watch this? In what context should they watch it? Should they watch it back to back with Carrie 1, or what are your final thoughts?
I think this movie is definitely worth a watch. But let's not take too much from it. There's a lot that I feel like the director had tried to put out there for it, but didn't end up succeeding. A lot of good intentions that didn't land well, and but at the same point, I feel like it does have enough of a commentary that still rings true today that would make it worthy to watch again. It's just all over the place. It's just kind of a messy movie in that aspect, but still entertaining. So
excellent.
I don't know if you would watch it back to back with Carrie. If you'd have to, it might be a little strange. But this is my second Carrie movie. I've only seen these two. I haven't seen the third one, so I'm intrigued to see where the third one goes. But
unfortunately, it goes back. Just so you know.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
The next two movies are just remakes of Carrie. So it's going to be more like that time when we did those two versions of The Exorcist 4 that were just the same movie but shot by two different people. It'll be like that. But
imagine a Groundhog Day where things get progressively worse and you don't have any chance to improve them.
I
didn't even know that there were two more. I only thought there was one more.
No,
no, sadly there are two.
I have high hopes. I'm
so many Carries.
In the truest Texan, bless your heart, Jason. For all of how that phrase is used, I use it now.
All right, Tony, your final thoughts on the Rage Carrie 2.
So like I said before, I don't say watch this after Carrie. I say watch this in conjunction with The Craft. Just get that. Just take a huge dip in the 90s lake, a long vacation day where you bathe in the lake of 90s, and that will be, I like this better than I kind of remembered. And I think there's a lot going on that's actually pretty darn good, marred by things that just kind of don't really gel. They don't really go anywhere in many cases. And then especially marred by an ending that's basically, hey, well, now's time for Carrie. You guys remember that, right? If not, we can't count on that you've watched it. So here's our version. Ta-da! And I don't know. That doesn't work as I wish that there would been enough different, or other than the emasculating spear gun, which is, I haven't seen replicated. So there you go. Yep. Kudos to everyone involved in that as far as horror goes. I mean, not that I want a ton of movies like that with that in it. That would be awful. I don't advocate that, but as far as seeing enough horror movies where you've watched a ton of gory stuff, I don't remember that in anywhere else. So there you go.
Cool, awesome. Julia, what are your thoughts on the Rage Carrie 2?
I think it is what we said earlier, that it's interesting to watch it in light of everything that's been going on, because there's definitely revenge fantasy. I mean, I never advocate horrible deaths for anyone as far as even, I'm not an eye for an eye person, so even somebody who causes horrible death, I don't have a problem necessarily with fate dealing them that punishment, but I don't believe in the death penalty, of its very, very few exceptions. And so that, that set aside, it is interesting and kind of fun in a weird, perverse way to see all these guys who are completely sleazy get like horrible punishments.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're into revenge porn, then this is a good film for you. But it's not. I mean, there's a lot. I like films that go a little deeper into the psychological thriller side of things, and this doesn't do that at all. I mean, there was a lot of potential for it, which the first movie does. Carrie, I mean, there is a lot of steep psychosis stuff that kind of gets not super unpacked, but at least visited a little bit more than it is here. Here, it's got a couple of cursory conversations with the guidance counselor, but that's about it. So, it's kind of an entertaining way to pass a couple hours. But I think that they could have done more with this story that might have been really interesting.
Interesting. Drew.
Oh, Carrie 2, Carrie Harder, Carrie 2, Electric Boogaloo. This movie, I made this movie eat a lot of my shit for the last week. I made fun of it online. I've made fun of it on this podcast. And, I'm going to give something back. I think this movie, throughout this conversation, I found myself repeatedly thinking to myself, this movie actually had a lot more going for it than I was giving it credit for. And for that, I apologize, because I did enjoy watching this movie, even though I have heckled it a lot. And I have definitely enjoyed discussing it. As far as what movie to watch it with, I say just watch it by itself, because as much as it is a sequel to Carrie, it works just fine as a standalone movie. So Carrie 2, Carry On Screaming, I salute you.
Excellent. My final thought is, Tony has it right. I think the place for this film is in and among horror movies, with kind of a high school bent of the 1990s. This particular kind of look of supernatural 1990s horror films, like The Craft and so forth. The other thing that I really appreciate about it is as much as this is a cheesy film, and cheesy is the wrong word, as much as this is definitely a B picture that is more in service to its plot points than it is to, any of the various emotional through lines that it could follow if it wanted to. Having said all of that, it's doing good work as far as thinking about misogyny and thinking about consent in a way that a lot of mainstream films really weren't at the time, now or then. I don't know if that's because it's got a female director. I don't know if it's because, I have no idea what, or if horror movies are always sort of out in front a little bit. But, I don't think it was a waste of time to watch it. But again, I called it kind of a Lifetime movie up on the big screen, and that's because the main point of the film is just to keep following the plot points, and so I enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to thinking about this as we go next to Carrie 2002, which came out just 3 years after this movie, and it's going to be fun to continue to do the compare and contrast and go deeper into all of this. Let's do endorsements. Jamie, what do you have to share with us this week? Whatever you've been reading, watching, has been on your mind, it doesn't matter.
Well, I am currently reading The Art of the Ask by Amanda Palmer. So I'll get back to you on whether or not I endorse it. But I was totally taken by American Gods, the TV show on Starz. We totally binge watched that, and it was wonderful. It was like everything I wanted a TV show. It has heart, it has comedy, it's meta. It's based on the American Gods novel by Neil Gaiman, and it's just perfect. I just highly recommend it. It's got everything you'd want in the show. The only thing I could think
Wonderful.
of that's on the Starz channel, but you have to have Starz to watch it, but it's great.
Tony, what do you have for us?
A few things. I would say, as I've stated before, Amazon continues to roll out amazing kung fu stuff that you can catch. Their martial arts stuff is amazing. Also, it came out that Shaw Brothers is now in conjunction with the Draft House and has 30 movies that they're going to be showing, and I'll have to dig up the links for the site. But I've seen some of the prints, and they showed a really awesome print of Holy Flame of the Martial World, but they're continuing this. These are prints that were recovered from a Shaw Brothers theater that somebody found. Dan Halstead found all the, like, literally a ton of prints or close to it, enough to the person who was hauling the prints in a truck said that he was going to break the truck and didn't want him to do it. But anyway, the Draft House now has had these prints for a while, is going to be showing them across draft houses all over the nation, and hopefully there's one close to you. But this is also in conjunction actually with Shaw Brothers, like has their approval, which wasn't given in the past. The reason this is so rare is because at one point, according to various people, Mona Fong, when she took over, decided she wanted to control Shaw Brothers prints and destroyed anyone she could find that wasn't directly there, so that nobody else was showing these. So these are a rarity as well. I also saw the anime Mazinger Z or Mazinger Z or Zeto Infinity today. Fathom Events is showing it today and tomorrow in theaters, and it only came out in Japan like in January, so this is cool. I don't know if it works for people without knowing about Mazinger, but it's a classic 70s show that's been revamped multiple times. There's versions all throughout there, but it was a great nostalgia trip / cool robots fighting each other. And finally, I'm also on the music tip. There's a band that I found through Amazon Prime Music, which I tend to use instead of Spotify for whatever reason throughout my day, called Haunt. And it's kind of a one-man, wrote it all, but he's getting a band to do it live as well as, for a future recording. He did an EP called Luminous Eyes, and it's this perfect marriage of Angel Witch and Iron Maiden, and I cannot stop listening to it. I love it so much. It is like, it doesn't happen often where I just put a thing on repeat and throughout the week, that's all I listen to, but especially since this is only 4 songs. But this EP, Luminous Eyes, it just works for me, and I'll have to post the Bandcamp link, because I cannot. If you're a fan of metal, I know there's a lot of marriage with horror. I don't know how many of our listeners where that lies, but it's so good. Just the purest new wave of British heavy metal sound, but created last year or the year before. It's great. But I can't stop listening to that and watching martial arts movies. It's been my 2 things, like when I'm not working.
Fantastic. Let's see, Julia, did you have anything to endorse?
I was trying to think if there was anything I really wanted to endorse that I haven't before. And really, I think I've talked about the things that I'm super excited about in the past. Like I've talked about the X-Files, which is back, and it's fun this season. We're having a good time with it. And I've revisited the show 6 Feet Under. I haven't watched like all the seasons, but I watched a few episodes from the first season and a few episodes from the last season just to kind of get a sense of it. And because I remember watching a few episodes when it first came out and not really getting into it, but I did watch some this time, and it's actually pretty good. It's really pretty good show. Yeah, it's interesting. That's kind of what I've been doing. Of course, right now I'm in Olympics mode, so I have nothing.
Right.
I can't really think about anything other than that.
So by the way, Julia, I hated last season. I hated last season of X-Files, but the Mandela Effect episode this season,
it was really brilliant.
Yes,
totally brought it back around. Like if you were like me, or even if you are like, why should I watch the season? I don't know if I'm still. That really brought it back around. That was super solid. And I wasn't even going to watch any of it. Rain happened to be watching. She watched the one before it, which was pretty good as well, about the brother and sister or whatever. And with great character actors, super great character actors in that one. But the Mandela Effect one was back to the original. Oh, it's so good. And then made me sad as well, because the commentary they brought forward was just sigh. That's how life is now. This is the world we live in.
Yeah.
And a lot of the best X-Files was that at the time, especially. And that was done super well. Kudos to everyone involved in that episode. That gave me back some life, because I retroactively hated X-Files I wanted to hate the closing 2 seasons, which I didn't like much at all anyway, even less after watching last season. I think I even quit about 3/4 of the way through last season because I just couldn't do it anymore. But that Mandela Effect episode is just brilliant, just so good.
Well, and of course, these seasons are way, way shorter than the original. Remember, think
Right.
about it. That was a network show, so you had 22 chances at greatness in a season, whereas now they're doing like 6. It's so much harder. But Drew, what do you got for us?
Couple of things. I would like. It's not done yet, but there's only 2 parts of it out. But I would like to tentatively endorse Milk Wars, which is a crossover between the Doom Patrol, which has been brought back by Gerard Way. Yes, the lead singer of My Chemical Romance, of all people, is writing the Doom Patrol.
Writer.
And it's awesome. It's really good. And so they're doing a crossover with the Justice League, and it's great. It's screw Doomsday Clock, screw Dark Knight's Metal. This is the DC thing you should be reading right now. It is the plot line is a extra dimensional corporation has decided that they are going to take over the DC universe by homogenizing it with homogenizing milk, which what that does basically, it takes all the weirdness out of the various characters and makes them something more palatable to the masses. Like, so you have Superman, who has now become Milkman Man. You have Wonder Woman, who has become Wonder Wife. And you have Batman, who has become the kindly Father Bruce. And my favorite, Lobo, has become Carl Lobo, a pipe-smoking, good-natured suburban dad. And the Doom Patrol stumble onto this, and of course, no, we like weirdness. We have to bring weirdness back. So there's only 2 parts of it out right now, but it is really, really fun and really, really weird, which are 2 things I like out of my superhero comics. So I highly suspect that I will enjoy the rest of it. The other thing that I have been digging into a lot on our break is a YouTube channel called Good Bad Flicks, which has been around, near as I can tell, for about 6 years. So there's a lot of material for you to dig into. But basically, it is these some of the episodes are only about 5 minutes long, some of them are about 20 minutes, but it is a film review channel, and it deals into sort of junk food movies from a very scholarly perspective. And the thing that I really admire is that he'll take movies that are universally reviled and he will point out, well, this is the stuff that was technically excellent about this movie that everybody hates, which I feel like is one of the core things about modern film criticism that has been lost, is no one can go, well, this and this was really bad about this movie, but my God, the set design was great. Nobody can do that anymore for some reason. And this guy does that, and he will give you these very, very in-depth histories of movies that'll probably never get it otherwise, like the Stallone Judge Dredd or the Super Mario Brothers movie. And it's really fascinating to hear this stuff. I actually before we started recording, I just got done listening to his video about waxwork. So it's a great channel. It talks about a lot of movies that you probably don't like, and a lot of movies that you do. Like he did Waxwork. He has a video on Troll Hunter. There's a lot of really cool videos on there, and I just highly suggest you waste some time watching this channel if you enjoy our podcast, because I think you will find some common ground there.
That's cool, man. I love that kind of stuff.
That's a great suggestion. I really like that. Well, for me, I've been enjoying a sort of very weird media diet that hasn't made a great deal of sense, and that's because I've been busy trying to do this rewrite, and I've been working on a nonfiction book about tiki culture, and so consequently my TV viewing has been all over the place. But I do have a couple of cool things. Just today, I was literally verklempt about the Ray Bradbury story, I Sing the Body Electric, which became this probably one of the greatest Twilight Zone episodes ever about the electric grandmother. And so I made our girls watch it, and it's so wonderful. So that's episode 35 of the third season of the Twilight Zone. And I enjoy saying that because if you can think of a television series with the production values of the Twilight Zone having more than 35 episodes in a season, how is that even possible? like like how I don't even understand. They must have just been making Twilight Zone like the year round. That's nuts. So yes, I Sing the Body Electric by Ray Bradbury. It's about these children who've lost their mother and they don't know what to do, and they're having a hard time readjusting. And their father orders an android to be their grandmother and live in the house, and it's wonderful, so great. The other recent discovery for me was a movie called The Sterile Cuckoo, which came out in 1969 that I'd never heard of before. This is not a tiki movie. I've been doing all these tiki movies, but this was just a straight up drama where Liza Minnelli plays this flighty girl that meets this stuck up boy as he's going back to college. And in a way, she's the very, very first. What do we call it? The manic pixie dream girl. She's exactly that. You know, she brings him out of his shell and all that stuff. But here's what's funny: she is a manic pixie dream girl, but she's also manic depressive and ultimately is threatens to ruin his life. In other words, it goes more or less the way it would really go if you met somebody who like had no sense of boundaries and everything was a crazy adventure all the time. It's very, very good. This is Liza Minnelli back when she was a really just high watt dramatic actress. So those are my thoughts. I Sing the Body Electric and The Sterile Cuckoo. Um, do with that what you will. So
Jason,
yeah.
have you delved into the, was it 1,200 episodes of Dark Shadows that are now on Amazon?
Oh, I've gotten a lot of it. Here's the hardest thing. So you try and watch, where do you start, right? And then
Yeah.
and then when you go away, how do you go back to where you were? It's not easy to like go, let's see, I think I was after this storyline, and that's hard, but Jesus Christ, yes, man, I love
But
Dark
that's
Shadows.
amazing. Like right now, like here, I love that they just kind of did that. They're like, so there's the box set of Dark Shadows, but we decide if you want to binge something, here's 1,200 episodes plus of a thing. There you go.
There you go.
That's
The,
pretty
the the really
amazing.
funny thing about that, Tony, that's such a wonderful example because the first like couple seasons of Dark Shadows, which I have seen a fair amount of, is it's not even a vampire story. It's just
Right.
good old fashioned gothic. Just
Well,
big
I
creepy house,
actually
lots of
have
spirits.
started watching The Dark Shadows as of last night, and
Have you
the
really?
episodes that are on, yeah, the episodes that are on Amazon, it just starts with the introduction of Barnabas Collins, I guess, because
I
they
see.
figure that's where
Oh, I didn't know that.
everybody, yeah, and I guess they figure that's where everybody would want to start. Although, like, I was thinking, because I started watching it while Jamie was asleep,
Hmm.
how jarring it would be if you were completely unfamiliar with Dark Shadows, because it does, there's no recap or anything. It just kind of throws you in the middle of a story, like towards the end of a storyline that they were finishing
Yeah.
up, and they introduced Barnabas Collins.
Yes.
I mean,
Sure,
and
because
it's a soap
Willie.
opera, like literal, like
Yeah.
people forget that it is a soap opera of that era. It happens
Yeah.
to have horror tropes,
Yeah.
but man, oh man, is it a soap opera?
It's a daytime soap. I just want to get into it and wander around, Tony. I mean, I want to live in that world. Drew, like when they go to the Blue Whale, that place where they do their drinking, and it's got the window that looks out on supposedly on the sea, but it's really just a big blanket. And I love it. I love that whole world. I just I that plastic world of the Dark Shadows is more beautiful to me than most of the world that I live in. Yeah, I love that stuff. Yeah, can't. Which reminds me, by the way, that was a daytime soap, and you can tell the difference because I just watched. I made my way through the first 100 episodes of Peyton Place, which was a nighttime soap and was way, way better production values, but the exact same era. And I don't know
I
what the
don't
point
know.
of that
I don't know
story
if
is.
anybody's ever quite rocked an Inverness coat quite as well as Barnabas Collins, though.
That's so true. That's
He
totally
is
true.
he is one sharp vampire.
Yeah, Julia, what do you think? Do you want to forsake all other TV and just start making our way
No,
through the 60s?
no, I'm good. Thanks. Appreciate the offer.
Awesome.
All right. I forced her to live in the 60s enough, honestly, as it as it is. So, gosh. Okay, this has been our discussion of the ring. We are in for it now. Now begins the slog through what might actually be pleasantly surprising, the 2002 remake and then the 2013 remake. This is going to be very interesting. We'll be back in 2 weeks for the 2002 one. We've got to do some traveling, so we won't be back next week. So that's
Well,
just a
it's
fair
good
warning.
that this episode probably is a long one because I know people have been clamoring for us to return, which is really nice.
Yes,
Because
thank
I
you.
always have
This is-
imagined it. Yeah, I always imagine in my head anytime we talk about taking one of these breaks, especially when it's going to be a long one, that like people are going to not care and they don't miss. Instead, we have people commenting on the message board and actually suggesting movies for us to do that are coming out, and that they would like to see us do. And I just that really makes me feel good because I don't know, like I said, for some reason I feel like people will like, oh, there's a bunch of other podcasts, I'll just forget about this one, but y'all really miss us, and that makes me happy.
Makes me very happy as well. Thank you, everybody. Jamie, Drew, Tony, Joya, well, have a fantastic 2 weeks, and we'll be back very, very soon. Bye, guys.
Night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Night.